Have you ever changed the way you speak just to feel like you belong, and then met someone who remembered the real you? When I first arrived in London, I learned something quickly. Your accent enters the room before you do. The first time I spoke at work, I saw it in their faces. The polite smiles, the slight pause, the subtle way conversations shifted after I introduced myself. No one was rude, but no one listened closely either. So I adapted. Slowly at first, then deliberately. I practiced in front of the mirror, softened my vowels, swallowed my R. I replaced "good morning, sir" with "morning." I laughed differently. I spoke less when my words felt too heavy with home. Back in Nigeria, my voice carried confidence. In London, it felt like luggage I was expected to drop. Within months, the change worked. Colleagues responded faster, strangers leaned in when I spoke, compliments followed. "You sound very well spoken," one manager said. I smiled and said thank you, even though I didn't know what that meant anymore. Calls from home became shorter. I found myself adjusting my accent, even with my mother, then catching myself and feeling strange about it. But I told myself it was survival, growth, evolution. I wasn't ashamed, I was just upgrading. At least that's what I believed, until one rainy afternoon changed everything. Before we continue, kindly like, comment, share, and subscribe. It motivates me. Also tell me in the comments where you are watching from. I had just finished a late shift and stopped by a small African grocery store near Peckham. The smell of dried fish and spices wrapped around me like memory. As I reached for a bag of gari, a familiar voice behind me said, is that you?" I turned slowly, and there he was, a face I hadn't seen in years, a name I hadn't heard spoken out loud since secondary school, my village classmate. And before I could stop myself, my old accent rushed out to meet him. We stood there for a few seconds just staring at each other. Then he laughed, a loud, familiar laugh that didn't care where we were or who was listening. So now you be this. London don't change you." Before I could stop myself, I laughed too. Not the careful laugh I had practiced, not the short, controlled one I used at work, the real one. The sound shocked me. It felt like something old and buried had suddenly pushed its way out. We stepped outside the store together. Rain drizzled lightly, the kind that makes London feel even colder than it already is. He talked freely, switching between English and Pidgin, telling me who had left the village, who had married, who had failed, and who had surprised everyone. And me? I answered cautiously at first. I tried to keep the accent in place, but it slipped. Every sentence pulled me further back. The words came easier, the jokes landed better, my shoulders relaxed. Then he said something that unsettled me. "You know, say the way you did talk now fit confuse person. Inside shop, you sound like Oyinbo. Outside, na my guy." I smiled, but the words stayed. We sat on a bench near the bus stop. He told me he worked night shifts, warehouse job, hard hours, no complaints. He spoke with pride, not apology. "You," he asked, "you don't blow." I hesitated. For the first time since arriving in London, I didn't know how to describe myself without editing. On my way home, his words followed me. "Inside shop, you sound like Oyinbo. Outside, na my guy." That night, I stood in front of my mirror again. I tried speaking the way I did at work, then I spoke the way I spoke with him. And for the first time, both versions felt unfamiliar. After that day, I started noticing things I had trained myself not to see. How I paused before speaking in meetings, how I rehearsed phone calls in my head, how my accent changed depending on who was listening. At work, it earned me comfort, but it also built a wall. People liked the version of me that sounded neutral, safe, easy to understand, but they didn't really know me. One afternoon, during a team lunch, someone joked about accents. Everyone laughed. Then someone said, "At least you don't sound like those fresh Africans." They laughed again. I smiled and hated myself for it. That evening, I ran into my village classmate again. This time, he looked tired, eyes heavy, shoulders slumped. We talked. He complained about work, I complained about work, but the difference was clear. He complained without shame. I complained carefully. At some point, he said quietly, "You know, say sometimes I try talk like you, maybe life goes soft small." That hit me harder than any insult. I realized something uncomfortable. I had turned assimilation into superiority, not intentionally, not loudly, but subtly. That night, my mother called. I answered and spoke normally, my London voice. She paused. "Are you okay?" she asked. "Yes, ma," I replied. But even to my own ears, it sounded distant. I ended the call quickly, sat on my bed, and wondered when sounding better started meaning sounding less like myself. The change didn't happen overnight. I didn't wake up suddenly proud or loud, but I stopped hiding. At work, I spoke the way my thoughts came. Not exaggerated, not edited, just honest. Some people noticed, some people didn't. But something else happened. I noticed. I felt lighter. The next time I met my village classmate, I thanked him. He laughed and said, "Na life." Months later, I spoke at a work presentation. My accent slipped slightly. No one corrected me. No one flinched. And for the first time, I didn't flinch either. I learned something important living abroad. Assimilation should never require erasure. Your voice carries your journey. Your accent carries your history. And anyone who makes you feel small for it was never listening properly. If this story resonated with you, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. It helps this channel grow and brings more stories like this to people who need them. Final question. Have you ever changed yourself to fit in, and did it cost you something? Tell me your story and also let me know where you are watching from.